Okay, it's preparing, Deb. We're almost there.
All right.
Okay, we're live.
All right. Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Prescott Unified School District Governing Board to order. And I would like to welcome all of you who are here, and also those of you who are attending via live streaming. We are glad that you could all join us this evening. So, Arden and Emma, could I get the two of you to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag
of the
of
United
the
States
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You should all have received your agendas. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? If not, could I then get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second the motion.
All right. Thank you. We have moved and seconded that we accept the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. I now would direct your attention to the minutes from our last meeting. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes? Could I get a motion on those?
Deb, I'll move that we consider approving the minutes from the regular study and voting session of January 12th and the minutes from the governing board retreat of January 13th as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approved the minutes of the regular study and voting session meeting of January 12th, 2021, and the minutes from the governing board retreat of January 13th, 2021, as presented. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the minutes have been approved. We are embarking on an exciting new project tonight. Each of the schools in Prescott Unified will be coming to us at one of our board meetings this year to have some of our parents and or students share with us some of the things that they are feeling about our schools. And we are thrilled to have Lincoln joining us for our inaugural event. And I would like to introduce Principal Karen Hughes to introduce our family.
Good evening. Thanks for having us. Thank you. I so appreciate it. Well, I have Britt and Michael Flores, and they are parents to Star Flores, who is a third grader at our school. And I think we have a kindergartner coming as well, right? Yeah. I'm glad to have this opportunity. I was a little nervous, like, oh, we got to go first, but no, glad to do it. Glad to anytime that we can have our families, speak about our school. I also had mentioned to Britt and Michael, please feel free. I feel like this is a safe environment for them to say what they love and maybe say what they want to see us grow on or some areas that we need to improve on. So no, we're glad to. Wonderful. And I do have one more Carolyn Payano, she's a parent of a 4th grade girl at our school. I text her. I'm not sure where she is, but she was supposed to be here tonight, so she may still hop in.
Okay, if she manages to get here, we'll look forward to her as well.
Okay, good.
We are so delighted to have you here, Mr. and Mrs. Flores. This may feel a little intimidating. We hope it doesn't. We aren't here to judge anything. We just want to hear what you have to share for us. Could you give us a few examples of what you have really appreciated about Lincoln?
Well, good evening, board, and thank you for having us. And I'm Britt. This is Michael.
Hi.
And I think I speak for Michael, and I think I speak for our family when I tell you that we have been nothing but impressed with the Prescott Unified, and especially Mrs. Hughes at Lincoln, as well as the Discovery Gardens preschool. We moved from California about 4 years ago. It was a very different environment. There was a lot of space between parents and teachers, parents and the districts. There was a lot of red tape. There was an idea that parents should be behind this invisible veil and not have anything to do with children's work in public school. And it was one of the reasons why we chose to move to Prescott, was to have a better, more hometown feel for our children's education. And Mrs. Hughes was our first contact even before we moved, and she has been an amazing anchor, both scholastically and emotionally for our family, helping us put roots down as we've grown here. And
A huge advocate just for
oh yeah,
our child and just for us acclimating to our new environment. Definitely.
yeah, we have some gifted kiddos that need some extra inspiration, a lot of extra guidance and partnerships with their teachers and the administration, and we found nothing but this wonderful safety net where we're very caught by the PUSD. So thank you.
Great. Do you have any ideas or suggestions that you'd like to share with us about something we could add or do differently?
We would definitely like to see funding towards a robotics program, especially at a younger age. I know we've been looking into that for STAR.
The kiddos like to build. I mean, our 4-year-old, for example, can build entire worlds in Minecraft. She knows how to read. She knows her letters. And that's just exposure. It's not that, I mean, she is very amazing and all children are special, but the exposure that you can give children at a young age to coding and robotics and building and STEM is so valuable right now. So yeah. Also, maybe some funding for a dramatic arts program again at Lincoln. I mean, we've got a beautiful stage. You could do some,
Non-holiday oriented.
Yeah, non-holiday oriented contemporary plays where you showcase even like student or, some of the kids in your high school's plays that they write. Some way to start to facilitate the arts, quote unquote, again, because it's a very construction, mechanically driven town. And it's important to keep that balance of, the work ethic and the construction and moving forward and all of that, but also the beauty side of it,
It's a platform for expression.
Yeah.
Terrific. Other board members, do you have any questions or comments for Britt and Michael?
I have one. I heard with great interest your desire to have your students involved in a robotics program. And I'm not sure, since I left Embry-Riddle about 1.5 years ago, we had a beginning of a program there with First Robotics. And I'm not sure, hi. Not sure if that program is operating any longer, but there were some professors at Embry-Riddle that were quite interested in continuing it. the position I was in actually tried to coordinate with our local schools to do those things. So that may be a contact for you.
We work with Mrs. Sampson, who runs your gifted program. And, you know, I've been peppering her for a couple of years now. Hey, can we get robotics? Can we get STEM? Can we get some exchange at Embry-Riddle? And I know that she's reaching out and trying to establish that, you know, that relationship.
Okay.
But, you know, I mean, it's a lot of funding too. It's the fact that like
Yep.
the little bits, coding pieces, you know, I'm a much better writer than I am speaker, but the things you put together to make things move, right? Those kits, they cost $100 for a teeny tiny little bit.
Right.
And it's not just gifted kids that can code, you know, and it would just be so fantastic to give all of our children the exposure to what they can do with their minds, you know, because they don't get it at home as much as we would like.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just
Andy,
going to say,
go ahead.
I think the pandemic has eliminated the position I had there that allowed for schools to come visit, but hopefully that's going to open back up and we'll start getting more collaboration with the district. Because that's a great local resource. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Anybody else?
This is face paint, by the way.
Oh, she didn't take a face plant somewhere, huh?
No. This is face paint.
Okay. Well, thank you, Britt and Michael, for coming and being our guinea pig. Hi. And thank you too, Karen. Appreciate you kicking this off.
You're
All right.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Mrs. Hughes. Thank you,
Bye.
board.
What's your name?
Okay, so just
Okay,
stop
I'm
doing
looking.
things. Stop doing
Well, I'm
things.
trying.
Just stop.
Okay. Kelly Bradstreet, do you have our instructional minute for us?
I sure do. I think Sarah just needs to give me hosting rights and I will be able to do that. My husband's not streaming. It says Andy Frere is the host now, Sarah.
Sorry
I'm
about
sure
that.
you'll
All the
be
names,
glad to hear that.
all the names moved up and I accidentally clicked on his name. Andy, can you make Kelly host, please?
To
Go to her name.
Kelly's name.
Yes, and it'll say more. Click on more
Okay.
and then say make host.
Host. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Kelly.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to try to do this in a minute, but you don't want to hear me talk too fast or you won't be able to understand. At the retreat, we mentioned that we'd like to just kind of give you a quick overview of the curriculum adoption process in PUSD. So that is what I'm going to attempt to do. Stage one, our needs assessment. We look at state requirements, resources, when new standards come about, like our science and social studies. In some cases, we're kind of forced to have a new curriculum, and that is the case with ELA and math. Those standards changed, so we had to change our curriculum. We get our teachers' input. What are they using? Is it effective? You know, what are their needs? And then we form a committee. And then after that, we put a committee together and we try to get as many of our teachers involved as we can at each grade level. And right now we're doing the sex education committee. And so we're getting community members, we're getting parents, we're getting teachers and administrators. But what we do is we research about what are best practices, what should we be looking for. We develop a rubric for evaluating. We all agree on criteria that we think is the most important for us to look for. And we began the process of evaluating curriculum using that rubric. This is an example of what we're doing with the ELA committee right now, currently. This is our timeline. And so you can kind of see, we don't need to read all of this, but what our outcomes are for each meeting. Right now, we're doing it on Zoom because we can't meet in person. But we are in the middle of this process and it's very exciting that we're getting to look at 9 different curricula at the moment. So this just gives you an idea of how it's all set up with our committee. We have about 17 members. This is the rubric that they created together. They all developed it together. Of course, Denise Murphy, our literacy specialist, helped us with what we really should be looking for when it comes to the science of reading. And what you see here is they've already evaluated some of these curriculums, and they're giving us evidence, and they're rating it on a scale of 1 to 5 and how well they think that curricula is developed in those areas. So that just gives you an idea. It takes a lot of work and a lot of collaboration. The third one is getting stakeholders' input. So once we've made a recommendation based off of, after we've done a lot of research and a lot of examination of curricula, we then make recommendations. And what we do is we go to the board with a presentation. That's not for you to vote on at that point, just to present it. And then we put it on review for 60 days for the community and parents to look at. And then we adopt it, or hopefully we do. Sometimes we have to go backwards and start over again, but that doesn't happen very often. And when we've done that, then we make sure we have a timeline for how we're going to roll it out. What are the resources we're going to need? What's the PD we're going to need? How will we update our instructional guides, or our DIGs as we call them? And when will we purchase it, and when will they be delivered? And then we implement. And when we implement, we're supporting our teachers the whole way, making sure they have what they need. We're providing parent nights to explain the curricula. We did that with math especially. We're having collaboration meetings to see how it's going, because we want to implement the curricula with fidelity. And then we're evaluating and monitoring how well is it working for us, and what adaptations do we need to make, or where do we need to fill in the gaps to make sure it's effective. And just to give you an idea, we have 2 adoptions currently in the process right now. One is the ELA K through 6, and the other one is sex education. And for the sex education, we haven't quite started, but I have the committee members. I think I have about 10 people on the committee, and doing a lot of research right now and finding all of the acceptable curricula that's the state says we can use. That's where we are in the process, and we will begin the meetings on February 12th with our sex education curriculum committee meeting. Questions?
Do any of the board members have any questions for Kelly on the curriculum adoption process?
This, not a question, but a comment that, I basically made, I think it was at our retreat, of just seeing this happen, I don't know, maybe 3 times in the last few years. I remember it was the math curriculum, a couple others, but just, it's so fun seeing teachers present the curriculum with excitement, and because they were a part of finding it, and it's great to see. I love seeing this process in action.
Thank you, John. I don't know how I'd do it without them. They are the experts in the field, and it does make it a lot more fun. And it's all about collaboration. That's the way we do everything in our district, and it works very well.
Anyone else? Thank you so much, Kelly. That was very succinct. Nice job.
Thank you.
All right. Marty, do you have things to tell us about summer school?
I do. And Sarah, are you going to present for us? Yay. Well, oh, we're at the end.
Well, that was quick.
Done. See how quick I am? It's that time of year when we're starting to plan for summer school. And of course, we feel like this summer school should look a little different. We'd like it to be a little more robust and extended. We're very hopeful that we can be in person. And we presented this idea to DLT, and Joe thought maybe it might be a good idea to share with the board kind of what we're thinking. This is right now we're talking about K-6, but I've been talking also with Andy at Mile High and Mark at the high school about what we might do for our secondary students. So tonight, this is who I have to help present. Lisa Hosking has been of course, she's one of our instructional coaches and outreach coach, but she's also been our K-4 summer school director. And Shelley Reed is our elementary math coach, but she has been our 5-6 summer school director. And Rachel, of course, is our distance learning coordinator and all around great idea person. And we include her in every meeting we can because she's always got fabulous contributions. So I'm gonna turn it over to the team.
Okay, so I'm really excited about the plan for this year because, you know, obviously it's been a pandemic, but we really want to make sure kids are well taken care of. So at the foundation of everything, we're going to be doing Capturing Kids' Hearts, but we want to provide a whole program for families. We want to have a full day of both academics, clubs, physical activity, and lots of social emotional support. We want to tie it into the International Space Station contact program that's coming up. So that's why the space theme, but we've got some big ideas and a lot of people are excited. A lot of teachers are excited about seeing the kids in the summer school program. Program highlights. Again, as a foundation, we really want to do the Capturing Kids' Hearts. We know that there's a lot of social emotional needs for kids. Also some Kids at Hope work as well. We really focus on reading specifics. We've had reading interventionists for the last 3 summers at least, and so we're going to employ them in the process and really take a look at kids' gaps and where they might have some struggles. You know, in my mind, the whole focus is on building confidence back in our kids so as they start the new school year. If they've had some gaps or some loss in learning, that they feel like they can come back and be successful. That's really kind of the whole, the focus. And then of course, lots of outdoor enrichment activities. There's some new trails being built out there at Abayajud and Granite, and some outdoor classroom spaces in addition to the outdoor space that's at the other side of Granite that we hope to really make use of this summer. Lots of field trips. We're going to bring those back. We had taken those out for a few years. And then lots and lots of movements. Get them outside as much as we can.
So as Lisa touched on, we are going to incorporate the International Space Station contact into our summer school theme. And Sarah, if you advance the next slide. So last March, we submitted an application to have a contact with the space station through the amateur radio on the International Space Station program. And this came to us from the World Genesis Foundation, who helped us submit an application. And lo and behold, we won. Our district was selected to have a radio contact with astronauts on the space station. That was supposed to happen sometime this semester, but as we know, everything has changed this year. So what we would like to do is begin incorporating the radio science and space science concepts in our summer school, and start that as our kickoff. Then we'll expand that into next year, and hopefully we'll get a date for our contact where a few students actually get to speak to astronauts. And this program incorporates several partnerships with folks you recognize. Embry-Riddle, the Yavapai Amateur Radio Club is a club that Terry Pemberton is very involved with, so we would tap into his skills. We have a contact with NASA JPL that's willing to help us, and of course the public library and others in the community. So we're going to use summer school as a kickoff to some of these concepts with our kids. And sometimes it's fun to just have a theme for summer school as you begin to plan and organize.
Okay, so that takes me to my part of the presentation. So incorporating that theme and really hitting hard, you know, we'll incorporate it within our academic time as well, but we really wanted to have a heavy focus in the afternoons because we're hoping that this would this program will be a all-day program with kind of an academic focus in the morning and a club and outdoor activity focus in the afternoon. So some of those tie-ins to our space station contact is having field trips to Embry-Riddle, having a rocket science club where kids can design and test and build their own rockets, having mission control, which is our tie into that amateur radio club, and really getting them knowledgeable, and hopefully they can take that knowledge from the summer and bring it to their schools next year to help share and spread as we bring that amateur radio into all the schools. Some geocaching, some the Constellation Trail hike, and then just some really fun clubs that we can incorporate in an astronomy club, a train like an astronaut for our fitness club. We're calling our coding club the Houston Operations, and a space crafts, so our arts and crafts club.
Sounds great.
And then, so the schedule would be, like I said, academics really heavily focused in the morning. Typically in past years, we've done a little more project-based learning. We're hoping to do a little more direct intervention instruction this year, really focusing on those gaps that kids might have picked up from the pandemic. So our plan is Monday through Thursday, focus on academics, and then in the afternoon, kids camp. And then on Fridays would be a full day of kids camp. So there wouldn't be academics on Fridays, but that would be our opportunity for those field trips and some of those bigger projects that we might not be able to get to. It would run 4 weeks. So most of June, and then just a couple days into July. But then after, we would have a break the week after the 4th of July, but then we want to have a second kind of program where it's a more intensive invite program for kids who really need some extra instruction, where they could have even smaller group with an interventionist to really work on some of those skills. And during that week, we'd also like to incorporate a kindergarten boot camp of sorts. So our incoming kindergartners, helping them to get prepared for starting the school year.
Good evening, everyone. And I wanted to give a special shout out to Emma and Arden. They are former 4th grade students of mine, so it's kind of always cool to see them. So hi, guys. It's nice to see you. So for this program, we want to try to focus on meeting the needs of students, every child, every day, and the families. So to do that, we're going to incorporate some IEP goal work. And so that just means if there are students enrolled in the summer school program that have an IEP, we will work on some of their goals, providing breakfast and lunch, free breakfast and lunch. We talked earlier about social emotional support, and you'll see on the next slide when we talk about staffing how we can do this. This one's exciting because typically we've had some limited bus routes, and it can cause some problems for parents to get their students to school. So we're looking at expanding those to get more students to summer school. Of course, continuing with our health and safety protocols, making it tuition free, which is fabulous. So anyone who wants to participate, they can. And then also really looking at limiting the class sizes, looking at staffing and doing it in such a way that we don't have big classes. We can meet everyone's needs that we need to. And then moving on to the next slide. In order to kind of make this all happen, we're gonna wanna staff it properly. And so we're looking at gen ed teachers that are really, specialize in their grade level or their core content, special ed teachers to help those kiddos. And if we need small groups in those cases, paraprofessionals that can help us, again, maybe for grouping. We'll have some program coordinators. And this is really cool if we can get some character coaches, 1 or 2, to help with that, capturing kids' hearts. And again, those social emotional needs. Having a nurse on campus is helpful for safety protocols and other things, and a social worker. And so we feel like kind of combining this, we can really meet the needs of the students that we need to this summer.
to say questions. Also, we're giving kudos to the template that we borrowed for free. Legit.
I have a question for you. Is anyone able to go and attend, or are you going to require some students to go? How are you going to fill the classes?
Our typical procedure is to have teachers invite students that could really benefit from summer school and do a personal invite to the families. And then it's open, and we're talking about the 4 weeks in June, and then it's open to anyone else that wants to go. Depending on the enrollment, sometimes we do divide the kiddos up into kind of a, group that needs more intervention in reading and math, and groups that can do more extension activities. Maybe they're on grade level and we can extend their learning. And then those that need the intervention, we're trying to fill in the gaps. The intensive week, of course, it'll be all incoming kindergartners, but we do imagine that to be invitation only, really targeting those kiddos that need small group one-on-one intervention, and really try to help them succeed.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a question in regards to just numbers. Do you have any anticipation of how this summer will compare to previous summers? I think largely because of COVID, right? Like, do you expect, triple the numbers or the same or anything like that?
I don't think I could say double or triple, but we do expect more participation, especially if we can be in person. And we've expanded it to a full day. So parents can drop off on the way to work and pick up on the way home, or they can ride the bus. But we're hoping by providing a full day, that will help families make the decision. Also, the expanded bus routes, we're hoping will increase participation. Summer school K-4, Lisa, is typically like 150 to 200. And then Shelley, what do you have, like 75-ish or?
I would say, yeah, we've high side 90, and usually it's around 80.
So, I would expect that's on the high side of those estimates, 300. So hopefully we'll get more like 400 is my hope.
And you mentioned potentially increasing grades 5 through 12.
That's correct.
Right? Is it doable to pull that off? That'd be amazing.
Well, we have an amazing staff.
They
can do it. Yeah, I've already had a conversation with Jeanette and Andy at Mile High, and we tossed around quite a few ideas, one of which might be we might move the 7th and 8th graders over to Granite and kind of add to that program there, so we can use the nature center and the trails and expand those clubs. That's one idea. Another idea is doing a program there at Mile High, focusing on things that they can do there at that school. And then Mark and I have just briefly kind of talked about possibly, there's always credit recovery at the high school. That program's always available, but maybe something a little different this year to help students with some concepts, kind of boosting their concepts before they move on to the next grade level. So we're 7 through 12, we're in talks, but I imagine we'll be able to put something together.
Have we predetermined any gaps that we know of already? That teachers stated they haven't gotten through their digs, or do we know what we're behind on already?
I'm gonna maybe let Kelly answer that. I know at the elementary level, they have done their STAR early literacy testing that's required as part of the Move On When reading requirements with the state. And so K-3, we have a very good idea of where they are in reading. I think some of the schools started Galileo testing. Kelly, do you know?
Yes, we have started that testing. Probably going to be waiting a little bit to retest and do more Galileo testing when the kids get back in person, because it's very difficult to do it online. So we have data, we have anecdotal data, we have the data that the teachers use, and I think they're already starting to form opinions about where kids have gaps. We're really concerned about the foundational skills more than anything right now. And we allow our teachers to talk about that about every month. We get them in groups. So we're already kind of monitoring and adjusting as we go now. But our plan is to really look hard at the data once we've collected a bunch, so that by the end of the year, we know exactly, where our kids need to be the following year, where we need to start, what they need to do over the summer. So it's kind of an ongoing process. I don't think we can get that information all at once and determine that.
I had a question. Sorry for my ignorance on this. First of all, you mentioned it'd be tuition free for this summer. Has that always been the case? And then secondly, if you expand and go with more for the 512 students, can you still be tuition free adding that in?
That's a good question, Andy. We weren't always tuition free. What really helped us provide free services was when we won the 21st Century grants at Lincoln, Taylor Hicks, and Granite. And then we have a big partner in summer school, elementary summer school, and that is Prescott Frontier Rotary. They've donated to our summer school program since the 80s. And so we've been leveraging funds from 21st Century and Frontier Rotary to really provide K-8 summer school the last few years. We're going to be leveraging funds from 21st Century, Frontier Rotary, as well as the ESSER2 grant to fund these programs. And that's why we're able to make them longer and more robust.
Thanks.
Lisa, did you have a comment?
I did. I wanted to address what John had asked about, can we pull that off? And typically, getting enough staff to fully staff summer school can be a bit of a challenge, but I've already had 4 or 5 teachers like, can I please teach summer school? They want to be with their kids. They're concerned, especially our K1-2 teachers really want to make sure those kids get what they need before they head on to 3rd grade. So there's already a lot of interest and excitement about being back with kids.
And this might be a good time to talk about the other program we're planning that's coming a lot sooner, and that is a spring break camp. We're going to, we think, I have to poll the families to see how many families are interested. I already polled staff, and like Lisa said, there were quite a few teachers that want to teach over spring break. Again, it would be an intervention type of foundational skills in reading and math with a kids camp opportunity in the afternoon. And our K2 teachers really stepped up. They're eager to help our younger kiddos. So it looks like we're going to be able to do that if there's interest from our families for a week of activities over spring break.
I'm really glad to see that you are looking at ways to help us to plug some of those gaps, and sooner rather than later. Anybody else have comments or questions for Marty?
Are we thinking of the spring break one? Is it going to be in person?
That's my hope, knock on wood, if metrics continue to decrease and we have success as we move back into hybrid and maybe modified hybrid, as long as we're continuing to have success and we feel that it's safe, yes, I really think it needs to be in person. I really don't want to offer a spring break camp online. I don't.
That seems a little silly.
Yeah. So yes, my hope is we will be in person. Of course, our protocols will still be in place.
Typically, those class sizes are going to be much smaller than our normal everyday class sizes, and so we will be able to have our mitigation and protocols in place if that's the case, and still be able to social distance and wear masks. And we'll talk about that later, but that's a big piece of all of this that sometimes gets left out when we talk about when CDC means kids come back to school. If you can make some of those measures happen, or all of those measures happen, like masks and distancing, then we can do it safely.
Thank you.
Okay. Lisa and Rachel and Shelley, thank you for being here, and thank you for your work on this exciting summer school program. So, all right, moving on, our next item is current events. Joe, do you have anything to share?
I do a couple things. First of all, just great presentations tonight. Really enjoying the discussion with the board and the input we're getting from our parents. But I also want to remind people things have been busy, but I didn't want you to forget it's Groundhog's Day. And Phil did see his shadow, which means more snow. And from a school district standpoint, distance learning could be taking the place of snow days. So, and I know that's kind of scary for some, but we would always build in recess for snow play. But that's one silver lining piece, is that we do have an option to continue learning rather than have to make up those days if we have more snow. I wanted to, maybe some of you saw Kathy Hoffman's State of Education today. It was very similar to our State of PUSD, really. A few weeks back, we had just a lot of similar points. Just wanted a couple of points there. You know, of course, COVID overarched everything that she talked about. And clearly, we're not alone in PUSD. Every school district and school in Arizona is struggling right now with how to reopen schools. And there are concerns, obviously, on several sides and fronts. So it was very clear from the state superintendent that that's a statewide issue. And we know it's a nationwide issue, too. She talked about social emotional needs. That was the top of her list. She talked in great detail about that. And I think there's some, she alluded to some funding on the front there, and we've heard some of that from the governor and legislature too. So that's hopeful for us. And we know PUSD has prioritized a lot of support for social emotional learning. We did an article on that this last week, but we've got about $500,000 in staffing into social emotional learning. But that's, again, a statewide issue that the superintendent brought up today. Also, you know, funding through COVID needs to be thoughtful and creative. She talked a lot about what's coming from the feds and how that cycles through the state. I know Mr. Moore is on top of that, and we talk a lot about that. We're very grateful for that. But it's very important right now, especially in a state that's at the bottom of the nation for per pupil funding. And she certainly mentioned that we have a lot to make up for in Arizona because of those funding deficiencies. So you can watch this on your own at azledge.gov, check that out. That's that happened today. And I wanted to give just a brief PUSD Sports Center update because I can, and I'm really happy that we have worked through some things and our athletes are competing as we speak. But real quick, wrestling's 2-1 on the season so far. It's a very different season, but we've got Jackson Perkins, Wyatt Ruerts, and Landon Francis still undefeated on the season so far. Boys soccer's 3-0. Girls soccer's 3-0 on the season. Those programs have had lots of success in the past. Boys basketball is 1-2, and girls basketball is 2-1. And we can stream all of these events, so more than we have in the past. You know, our audiences are limited to just 2 parents by AIA rules right now. We're looking forward to seeing all of this open up more as metrics improve. But we've also had our cheerleaders cheering at each home game, boys and girls basketball games. And so we've still got a lot going on in our schools. So, and we're just really happy we're able to do some of that participation at this point. So that's it for now, President Dillon.
Okay. Any other board members have current events you'd like to share? I will share that in connection with our new school liaison program, the Discovery Gardens students returned yesterday. And so I went yesterday morning and stood outside, masked and socially distanced, and welcomed our students and parents back to Discovery Gardens, and was really, really glad to be able to do that. So I'm really looking forward to continuing with that liaison program.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Connie, okay, I finally turned on my mic. I wanted to thank Marty for her efforts. I don't know if everybody knows that she was able to find, I don't know exactly how many, Marty, because I haven't talked to you since then. Several, let's put it that way, several volunteers from our very active and helpful volunteer committee to teach when school reopens or when there is a need, anytime between now and the end of the year, right, Marty?
Yes,
Yeah, the end of the school.
it was about 12 volunteers who said they would help be guest teachers if we're short-staffed.
Yeah, thank you for that, Marty,
You're
because
welcome.
I mean, they're not being paid or anything, they're volunteers. And the fact that we could find that, you know, that number of volunteers, I think is great. One question I have is, are most of them, are you doing anything about grade levels? In other words, I assume that most of the teachers that you've found are interested in elementary. Is that correct? Or did they say, I'll do anything?
There were some that just wanted middle school and some that just wanted high school. And so I shared those names with the principals, and they're following up to kind of get them sort of trained and ready to go.
Great. That's great.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you. Thanks again. That'll help.
Okay. Yeah. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions or comments on any of the items on the consent agenda? Hearing none, could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you. All those in favor of accepting the consent agenda as presented, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Our next item under our study and voting session is a change to the district calendar. Marty, you want to talk to us about that?
Yes, we realized as we were planning for hybrid that we had scheduled an in-service day for Tuesday, February 16th, which would give families a 4-day weekend because that's back-to-back with President's Day on the 15th. But we realized that, you know, we'd rather have kiddos in person at school with our hybrid AB schedule. And so we are proposing that we move that in-service day to Friday, February 12th, the Friday before, when students are doing at-home learning already. So they weren't intended to come to school on Friday. So we would do our in-service. That would be a no school day for students on the 12th instead of the 16th.
Okay, thanks, Marty. Any questions or comments on this for Marty?
You know, I would just say my wife asked me about that today because she's so smart. She's looking ahead at the calendar and just said, oh my gosh, is that really going to happen? And so I think it's a great idea to move it.
Anybody else? All right. Is there a motion to approve the change to our calendar?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve a change to the Prescott Unified School District calendar for 2020-2021 as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the change presented to our calendar. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. All right, we will move on now to our information and discussion items. I would remind you that these items are for discussion only, and we don't vote on any of these items tonight. Brian, would you like to tell us about the school board summary budget report?
Well, unless there's any questions, it's as presented. The first line item, the maintenance and operation budget, is reflective of adjustments that we will have to do in our last revision for distance learning, and the latest 100th day ADM numbers for. So those are the balances, the expenses, and the budgets. So if you have any questions, I'm here.
Okay. Any questions? All right, move on to the next item, which is an update and discussion on our COVID and reopening information. And to start this discussion, I would like to start by sharing my perspective on where we are at this point. I do need, however, to emphasize that this is my view only. I cannot speak for any of the other board members. I'm only one voice. It has been a long year. I'm tired, and I suspect most of you are too. We've been fighting COVID for a year, and in spite of the best minds and efforts around the world, we still can't predict with any certainty exactly what the virus will do. Last summer, the district created a roadmap to respond to COVID. At the time, we knew little about the disease, and we used the metrics provided by the state. Fortunately, though much about COVID is still a mystery, and the metrics are now more substantial than we could have ever guessed, though thankfully beginning to go down, we have also learned more about the virus, especially regarding children. The board has been receiving a number of emails regarding the district's current COVID status, some of which are demanding an immediate return to full in-person learning. Others are asking why we're even considering a return to the hybrid model with the metrics still so high. I appreciate both of these positions, as well as that of the many writers who support the decisions we have been making. I regret that some people in the community feel they aren't being heard. I can assure you, I have read each email repeatedly, and I frequently walk around with a knot in my stomach as I think about the struggles experienced by all of our students, families, and staff. I believe I have responded to each email I have received, though it usually takes me a couple of days, so I have time to reflect on the writer's concerns before I respond. I appreciate that parents are advocating for their children, whatever their stance. I have been doing a great deal of reading this year on a wide variety of articles and reports on COVID and schools, some of which are contradictory. This week, I returned to the January 8, 2021 CDC report on operating schools during COVID-19. Here are a few points I gleaned from that report. Number one, schools should be guided by what is feasible, practical, acceptable, and tailored to the needs of each community. It is critically important that strategies be revised and adapted depending on the level of viral transmission in the school and throughout the community. The number of school-age children with COVID-19 has been increasing. Children and adolescents can be infected with the virus, can get sick with COVID, and can spread the virus to others, though many exhibit no obvious symptoms. 3, there is little evidence that schools have contributed meaningfully to increased community transmission. And 4, in order to reopen schools as safely and as quickly as possible for in-person learning, it is important to diligently implement mitigation strategies to slow the spread of the virus both inside the schools and out in the community. Among those strategies are staying home when appropriate, hand hygiene, masks, cleaning and disinfection, ventilation, modified classroom layouts, identifying small groups and keeping them together, alternating schedules, and notifying and quarantining close contacts. Given the information we now have about children and COVID, I'm requesting that the district revise our roadmap to reflect both existing information and data as well as our current reality. The one thing on which I'm reasonably certain we can all agree is that we want our students back in the classroom as soon as possible. At this point, I will be opening it up for the rest of the board members to give your opinions and views. But to begin with, I would like to invite our 2 student representatives, Arden and Emma, to share some of their thoughts about this with us. So Arden, you're unmuted, so why don't you start?
Thanks, Deb. First of all, I want to say that you made some really amazing points there, and you said that so well. I don't think I'm going to say it as well as you did, but I appreciate everything you do. I've been communicating with a variety of students from the high school, and I was actually reached out to by one of them specifically who wanted me to share a message that she had written with a few of her fellow peers that she thought I should share with the board and read to you all. So I'm just going to read that if that's okay with you. I've been talking to some friends and we are confused about why we are scheduled to go back to school on February 8th, considering that we still have very high numbers of cases, percent positivity, and hospitalizations. We are also all frustrated with things constantly changing back and forth between distance and hybrid learning. It is far more convenient to be in distance learning than hybrid because in distance learning, the whole class is present. 3 out of 4 of the classes I'm taking right now have us doing group projects, and if we go back to hybrid, I won't have classes with the people in my group. This will only make learning more difficult. Some of the other students and I think it would be much easier and safer if we just stay in distance learning for all of 3rd quarter. That way, our chances of having a more fully normal 4th quarter are more likely, and the transition will be more natural as we go from distance to hybrid learning from one quarter to the next. So that's the perspective of one student and her friends and the people that she's surrounded with. And I think she makes some really good points. But I also want to mention that a lot of the people I've talked to are very willing and eager to go back, especially student athletes in particular. And I think that it's important we take all of the sides into consideration and try to make a good compromise. And I can promise you that 100% of the students are ready for things to be normal and are excited for all of this to go away. So take that as you will, but thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Arden. Emma.
I would agree with Arden. I've definitely heard those perspectives. I've heard perspectives all over the board, though. I've heard people saying we should stay online for the rest of the quarter. I've heard people say we should go in person now. And I think that hybrid is the best way for us to compromise those 2 things and still stay safe. There are a lot of people that are really, really excited to move back into the hybrid model. So I'd say go for it, but there's lots of different perspectives to be represented. I'd just like to also add, over the past semester, I've had the opportunity, along with Arden, to be present for all these board meetings and for some meetings with the district leadership in our school district. And it is impossible to come away from any of those meetings with a feeling other than everyone is doing everything they can to help the students. All of this is focused towards helping students to continue to learn and develop and grow both mentally, emotionally, socially, in every way we possibly can. So I just really just like to throw that out there and say thank you so much for all of you and all that you're doing for us.
Thank you, Emma. Appreciate it, ladies. Thanks for being here. I would now like to open this discussion up to the remainder of the board. Connie, you're muted.
I have one question that I have, and I may speak out of both sides of my mouth as we're going through this, because I think that's kind of what COVID is doing to all of us here. The first question is, since we had been in with the elementary grades, the younger kids, a 4-day hybrid, modified hybrid schedule prior to going back to virtual learning. Is there discussion or consideration of going back to that schedule on February 8th? I don't believe there is, but I'd just like to know maybe if Joe wants to chime in, if that,
sure,
that discussion had come up.
I'll tell you, there's between 13 and 15 people in our principal meetings, and Tuesdays we spend 3 to 4 hours straight together talking about all these things, and then we have meetings in between. And so these are the types of things that we're looking at. And if you've read my communications lately, you know, they talk about the dates that we've laid on the calendar, and I have promised to push as hard and fast as we could. And I've even used the word aggressive. I use that with love. I was a wrestler, but we would very, very much work as hard as possible to move as safely possible. So, and these are tricky decisions, but yeah, my question to the poor principals today who are just talking about how hybrid's going to go is, how you feeling about when we can take that next step? And I think the next logical step is K4, 4 days a week. And you know, there's some things that we need to be able to find out, and there's other people in the room that can speak to this, but in terms of how sick are our families, it's hard to stay in touch with that when they're not with us, when they're in distance learning. We'll find out quickly when they come back. You know, of course, we're looking at our neighboring districts and seeing how they're doing, and they're doing well on these types of models. And so that we're looking at a lot of things. But my question to the principals, and this is how our communication model works in PUSD, is how are people feeling? How are your students feeling? How's your staff feeling? How are your parents feeling about moving back? And they're like, whoa, slow down, Howard. But then what happens is then they take that conversation to their sites and they start asking those same questions. But again, it's not a popularity contest. It's not how many people think we should do it. I mean, that's part of what we look at, but it's also what do the numbers look like? And so a lot of people are asking us, well, are the metrics dropping that fast? And you know, we started this concept of February 8th with a lot of hope and just sort of hoping the metrics down, and it's going that way. And Alexa could speak to that. So it's a long answer. There are a lot of facets to it, Andy. But yes, we're looking very closely at that. That would be the next step at the K4 level. And then of course, I'm asking our principals, so next we should look at 5-8. What's that looking like? In high school, where are you at? And so that's how I'm pushing, and we're all pushing, as we're asking our principals who have their feet on the ground and their ears to the parents and the students and the staff. And so we're looking at that and numbers at the same time. But yes, that would be the next step. At this point, I don't see how we do it by February 8th. Because, you know, there's a lot of logistics to getting us to go back to hybrid, and doing that safely and thoughtfully and working through all the moving parts of that.
Thanks. So on the other side then, I do have serious concerns, you know, going back, but I think that the things that are in line with what has me considering that this is a good move at this point. I guess I would say, first of all, that I don't know that the roadmap necessarily needs to be changed. I think we can adapt within what's written. And I'm looking particularly at our our list of substantial, moderate, and minimal guidelines. And if we look at the substantial, where we are currently in the substantial range, infection rates currently, I know, are dropping. With guidance from the CDC about the potential to return to school in hybrid learning. I think PUSD is confident that we can effectively mitigate risk and ensure safety, and we can monitor the known infections. So I think those risks that are all in the substantial level, we can monitor, and we know that there's positive moves on those that puts us into the moderate range. So as I look at this, I don't see necessarily need to adapt these standards, maybe more as a policy exception is kind of what I'm thinking as the way to move forward and say, while we don't fit the moderate category yet, there's definitely a move in that direction. I think some of the moderate standards we are hitting and working on. And that's why I feel confident that I think taking the step to go to hybrid is a call that we can make at this point.
Is hybrid in the middle school, high school, is it 4 days a week or 5 days a week? 4 days?
Hybrid's 2.
2 days, but
4 days
but nobody goes on Friday, right?
Right.
Right.
Okay. Do the parents have an option if they don't want to go to hybrid? Can they have their kids remain in that distance learning through that prep format?
Yes, absolutely. And all along, some of the confusion is parents are like, so if they have an option, why don't you go back? And so part of that is that then teachers don't have an option and there wasn't a vaccine. And part of where we're seeing a finish line is that there's now a vaccine. A large amount of our staff has gotten that first shot. The next one's coming February 19th. And when that's kicked in, we're going back. Whether we got the shot or not, we're going back. So that really changes things in terms of, I know parents were frustrated and saying, if that family has an option to stay home, what's holding you back? And so that's where this is very complex, is you have to consider the 450 people on your staff as well.
What's the difference between all students being virtual and prep? I mean, if we gave parents the choice and we had some kids going back full time and the others we put in prep, what would be the difference for what those kids in prep would experience then to what they are experiencing when it's all virtual?
There are some differences, and Marty or Kelly could answer that. Who feels like you want to jump in on that one?
Right now, we have dedicated prep teachers at the K4 level. So it looks different in that they know that they're in prep long-term and they're working with them in that virtual format a little bit differently than the regular virtual that we're doing. I'm not sure I understand your question exactly, Deb, but I can tell you that we have as of this evening, 45 students who are moving into prep now that we are going back to hybrid. So that's 45 students that families don't want in our schools quite yet as we move more into in-person. So if we just offered this option of full in-person or virtual, we would have a mass influx of families that would come into prep, which would be very disruptive. We'd have to change schedules probably of all students. We would have to restaff the prep program so that we could cover all of those students that would move into prep immediately. Was that your question?
Part of it. Let's say Arden is you know, like all students is in virtual right now. But if we went back to full in-person and Arden decided she didn't want to do that, what would be the difference in what she would be doing in class, or what she would be would she be with the same teacher? Would she be with the same students? What would she experience?
Right now, high school prep students stay with the same teacher and stay with the same schedule. The teacher is trying to address the needs of the prep students while teaching in person at the high school level.
Okay.
Right, they're teaching in person at the high school?
When they teach in person, I'm talking about when we start hybrid on the 8th and they have kiddos in front of them. Not full in person, but hybrid in person.
So they're teaching the same lesson plan per se to the prep kids and the ones that are in the class.
I'll let one of the high school administrators respond to that, but I believe that's yes.
Yeah, so great questions. Currently, as has been mentioned, whether a student has requested prep enrollment or a student's family has requested regular enrollment, everybody's doing the exact same thing right now, aren't they? All distance learning every day, Monday through Thursday. There's direct instruction and interaction with their teachers. On Friday's a school day as well. We talked about it being a 4-day week right now. That's not strictly accurate. Fridays are a learning day as well. Teachers give assignments in advance and structured activities that link what we've done in the past week with what we're going to be doing in the next week. And there's supposed to be about 45 minutes of that for each class. But you're exactly right, Cara, that everything is the same right now. Like Marty mentioned just a moment ago, once we move into hybrid, that becomes more challenging for teachers. And I think maybe this is embedded in Deb's question. Is it going to look a little different for those kids who are on prep? It will. If there's a teacher who has 30 students in their class, let's say, we break the alphabet in half, as you know, and so on our A days or Mondays and Wednesdays. Ostensibly, half those kids would be there and half would be there on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But we have a group of prep kids, and it's about 15% of our kids, a class of 30. We're looking at 3 or 4 or 5 kids won't be there either day. So a teacher has to keep all those things in mind. I'm juggling, okay, these kids I have in person on Monday, I won't have those kids in person until Tuesday. We're encouraging teachers to simultaneously work with both of those groups. But then I have to keep in mind, I'm going to hand this out to this group today. I'll hand that out to the other group tomorrow. Oh my gosh, I can't hand it out to the other 4 kids ever. What do I do for them? I better digitize that, etc. So there's a lot going on, a lot of things that a teacher is having to juggle, a lot of plates spinning for them. And it is the case that what we found last semester, at least, our prep kids, because they don't get the direct teacher contact and because there's less of the built-in time management structure that the school day provides, some of them struggled, some of them did really well. We're hopeful to see good things this time. Our first go at distance learning was rough. We were putting things together. This time around, the feedback we've gotten has been mostly very positive, and we're confident the same will be the case for hybrid and our prep kids as well. That is even better this coming time than it was last time. Sorry, Marty, go ahead.
It looks that way at the high school because we're trying to maintain all those options for our students.
Mm-hmm.
We have so many opportunities at the high school. The way that we were able to maintain that is through this kind of structure. At 5th through 8th grade, teachers have a dedicated period for their prep class. So they've been able to create a schedule where, say, all algebra kiddos come 3rd period that are in prep. And so they have a dedicated time each day to work with their prep students. At the K4 level, we have dedicated prep teachers for each grade level. So they stay with those teachers all year long.
So for an elementary student, if they've been in the large group and part of the hybrid group, but decided to go to prep, they would actually change teachers.
That is correct.
All right.
I think what Deb was asking earlier is, say you're in 3rd grade and you're in distance learning, and then there's a 3rd grader in this prep course. Are they learning the same thing at the same time? Or is it the teachers are different, so they're learning different things, or they're...
No, That's not true. They actually collaborate with each other about every 2 to 3 weeks, and they're all teaching the same thing. It might look a little differently, but yes, they're all on the same pacing.
Okay.
Thanks, Kelly.
For our protocols, are we, with the COVID, we have the masks in schools, we have the plexiglass, we have, we're trying to do social distancing. Could we go, I mean, do we have to have an extra cleaning day? Like, or is there a massive janitorial cleaning that has to go on weekly,
No,
daily?
Mr. Moore has become kind of an expert on cleaning. Brian, do you want
Starting on next week, we would continue what we were doing when we were in hybrid before, and that is using our custodial services, SSC, on Fridays. Since there are also there's no buses running on Friday, we're using our transportation staff to hit sites and schools, and they have this electrostatic bomb that can go off in a classroom that completely sanitizes it, and over the weekend it's then ready for Monday's use and students being there. But a lot of it does fall on the teachers and the staff during the school day, especially at the 6 through 12 when we have changing of classes. And so we're not talking only about being able to provide learning and the education for students. And we also have to have the staff that is cleaning classrooms when we're switching periods, because desks and plexiglass and masks are only as good as the surfaces that they're going to be having high touch point contact. So we would resume everything we were doing before in hybrid, and I think we were successful, as noted, with the lack of the virus going back and forth, and so there.
Brian, I apologize if your wife was in earshot when I said you're an expert at cleaning. I hope that doesn't cause problems for you.
I have, there is only a certain amount of cleaning that can be done, and since now I'm an expert there, I just don't do any at home.
Would it be feasible? I know several years ago, the teachers wanted to go to a 4-day week. For the rest of this year, would it be feasible to go to a 4-day week with that extra cleaning happening still weekly? I don't know.
I think it's worth discussion and consideration as we look to push and move back to in-person as soon as possible. I think, and that's come up over this last year of how do you maximize those cleaning days, and how does that help us keep people safe with all the mitigation. So maybe something we can ask Alexa to look into, if there's any advantage with that, or how we can find an advantage to make it safer through that kind of concept. Worth looking into for sure.
Well, and one thing with that electrostatic sprayer is it has to sit at least 24 hours without anyone in the room. So that's why we do it on Fridays. So then it has the whole weekend to sit, kill any virus, and then is ready for students to be back. Because when we were talking about modified hybrid back in September, October, we were trying to figure out how to move that day around, and it's just not feasible based on the schedule that it has to sit for 24 hours.
I have gathered a number of questions based on emails I've received from parents, and I would share those, but I would invite board members to jump in as you choose. So first, some parents have strongly requested that our schools open for full in-person learning on February 8th. What would keep us from doing that?
Good question.
Yeah, I can let other folks chime in. There's a lot of things that would keep us from doing that. One would be how much of the vaccines kicked in yet, and how safe are our teachers to do that? We hear from a lot of people that say CDC says we should be back in school. That's the first sentence. The second part of that is, with mitigation factors in place and depending on the spread in your community, or your state or your county. Those are things to all consider. If you are able to social distance, wear masks, wash hands, and put all these other mitigation places in factor. And so all of those things are quickly put to question if we do an instant return to full in person. I know there are lots of people in the room who can add to that if you have something else to add. There's a lot to it, I think.
I know I'd like to see us go full in person, but I would like to have the second vaccine for the staff and teachers done. So you said the second vaccine comes on the 19th, something like that. So I don't know. My view is I think after that second vaccine, then we should go for it, whether it be 4 days so we can clean or the whole 5 days. So that's my opinion.
Maybe this is a good time to throw out this question of it. I'd be curious to hear the actual thought on this, because in my mind, I think I'm ignorant about it, but is in doing our peak model for the distance learning and full inclusion, is it easier to have those two happening at the same time versus the peak and the hybrid? Like, is it easier to do, you're either completely distance or you're completely in person, where hybrid, in my mind, seems like it'd be way challenging for staffing to have those two happening at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Any comment?
I would just kick in kind of what we were saying earlier in terms of, now that we're going hybrid, we have a whole bunch of families saying, I'm not ready for that, and jumping into prep. And we think that if we go full in person with, without some time in between, then we're going to have a whole lot of people not feel comfortable with that and jump into prep. And at that point, we have capacity issues with that.
That ties in with the second question I had. Other people wonder why we are looking at opening for hybrid learning on February 8th when the metrics are still well into the substantial range. What has changed or is being adopted to make the district consider that move? And have we abandoned the metrics?
There are a lot of people who would like us to abandon the metrics. Well, there are some people that would. I would say, no, we have not abandoned the metrics. And the number one change is vaccines. So we're starting to build immunity and confidence with that. And so the other reasons have been mentioned before, but I'll let other people jump in. But no, we continue to follow the metrics. I would say we continue to look at multiple measures in this, including where we are listening to people. And again, I'll warn that if this becomes, what people say or think more loudly or more politically or whatever it is, and you do totally ditch the metrics, that's pretty dangerous too here. So what we've done is a very balanced approach to that. And we've looked at many measures, and including, and especially when we talk about tweaking the roadmap, we could really add the things that we put in our communication for probably the last 3 months, which are the other things that we look at are mostly around capacity. Can we contact trace? Because around Thanksgiving, we were so inundated that we couldn't contact trace. We could barely stay up with it. We were starting to lose ground with that. And then also, are there too many staff members that are sick or quarantined to where we don't have the capacity to cover our staffs? Now, with the numbers going down, we believe that's getting better. And with the reports we're getting from our staff, we believe that we can handle it in hybrid. But it's probably something you don't jump or dive completely into without starting to see, how our community spread really affects schools when we go back to class. And we can control that when we're in hybrid to some extent, although we were starting to lose control of that when the spike hit. I'll stop at that.
I'd like to ask Alexa if she has any insight. She's done such a great job and following all this. What are the things, Alexa, do you have any way of gauging what other school districts approximately like ours in, student enrollment and whatever demographic you want to use, but do you have any inkling for where we stand in as far as hybrid, virtual, both, neither, where we stand in that group of people throughout the state that you have contact with? I'm thinking a lot about the Native American districts. It's almost like, we have a 2-tier or actually 3-tier system with the prep and the distance learning and the virtual learning. What is your thought on that, and how do we rank? I don't mean in behavior or anything like that, but how do we rank in terms of where we stand via the rest of the state?
That's a great question. For a while there, AED was keeping pretty good track of which models of learning different districts were from across the state. And so I was looking at that information actually today, and unfortunately it has not been updated since January 7th. So almost now. And I looked specifically at Yavapai County, and it definitely isn't accurate because it wasn't reflecting the changes that we've seen with Humboldt and Chino districts. So I don't really have a great idea of, statewide what we're doing. So I don't have a solid answer for you, but I have been looking for that information, and I'm hoping that information is updated soon because it would be very helpful.
Did Kathy Hoffman say anything about that in her State of the School talk? Anything about?
Very generally, I mean, she just talked about that districts were all in different places and depending on their community. One thing I will say to clarify is there's a lot of people saying that everyone in Arizona but Prescott's back in the full in-person. That's very, very far from the truth. Including, we get a lot of people that tell us our neighbors, Chino and Humboldt, are back full in person. And a lot of these folks are high school parents, but Humboldt has 2 days back in hybrid, 2 days a week so far. The snow slowed them down a little bit. Chino is not even considering coming back at all in high school until February 16th or later. So, so that's just in the area, but definitely my experience, and I talk to a lot of superintendents and I'm in a lot of meetings with superintendents across the state. It's all over the place. Folks, we still have people who have never seen 1 day in school. And we have a lot of people that forgot that we spent almost a whole quarter in hybrid. But there are many districts who have been in distance learning since day one and have not stepped 1 foot in school. So, we're all in different places with that.
I think that might be a problem that would be impossible to solve. I mean, to expect everyone to stick to the, not the safety guidelines. Yes, of course, we all need to stick with those. But as far as opening, not opening, that is something that, I know we should want to have resolved, but in reality, it really does depend on the individual community that you're in and what they feel is best. In other words, I hate to say it, but it's on our shoulders to make that decision. And, all I keep thinking about is the fact that kids should be there as much as possible. Because there are different tiers, and it's almost like tracking kids, you know, not contact tracing, but tracking them in a certain way. Maybe the only way to do it fairly is to ask the parents, you make the choice, in which case they would only have a couple choices. So, you know, in order to kind of calm the waters a little bit, I have never been in a situation like this, but now my grandchildren are, and you know, I would rather have them in school if it's safe. And that's how I feel about it, because I've never had to deal with this kind of situation before. So I guess I'm not offering any solutions. I'm just venting about how I feel, and you know, how people without kids versus people with a lot of kids, people where it's a stay-at-home mom or dad or both, versus the ones who have to go to work. What are they up to? I mean, we have childcare. I think that's fabulous. But I just am not sure if they, as the parents and the guardians for those kids, shouldn't have the first vote, you know.
It's important, I think, to listen to our parents and to our community and to see what they want. I also recognize, however, that the choice of one family impacts the choices of other families. And I feel that I was elected to be the one having to make these difficult decisions. And
right.
I don't like having to do that. It's not something I enjoy, but I think it's important. I also would like to point out that in my view, one of the pieces, in addition to the vaccinations that will change the view, is that there have been many additional studies on kids and COVID since last summer. And we know that while they can get the virus and they can spread the virus, it's at a much lower level. And if we are really careful with our mitigation, that, you know, I believe personally that we can start inching toward getting them back.
You mean starting with the K4s and then next week and the next week?
So,
yeah, because there aren't that many weeks left. We have spring break, which is in third quarter, right? Or does that start the fourth? Okay, it's the end of the quarter. Okay.
Whoops.
All right. Well, that's. You're right,
Andy.
Deb.
I'm sorry.
Andy?
Just a question. I saw a report recently that there was concern. We talked a little about getting that second vaccine as being kind of a benchmark that may get us to full in person, potentially. Saw a report in the Courier, I think over the weekend, that there's now concern that we're not getting enough vaccines in this area. So I'm curious, maybe Alexa or Joe can talk about that. Is that something that's out there now that we have a potential stopping or a block that's going to hurt us if Yavapai County isn't getting the vaccines that we need?
So
Alexa's, go ahead, Alexa.
I got this question prior to our first clinic, which I just want to say was a fantastic clinic. On the 22nd, we had about 320 staff members come and get their vaccination throughout the day, and it went smoothly, and it was an exciting first step to getting kids back in the classroom. And so when we were planning for that, I had asked Stan Goligoski, who's been really, really critical in helping us get vaccinated so quickly over at YCESA. And so he told me that he doesn't have any concerns about getting our second allocation of the doses. He said that what happens is when a request is made for the first allocation, then there's an automatic request for the second dose. So I'll be checking in with him this week just to make sure nothing's changed, but I'm in touch with him on a regular basis, and he hasn't raised any red flags to make us think it's not happening. And I've still been working with Spectrum Health, who will be running our second clinic as well. So they haven't raised any concerns. So I'll be checking in on that, but nothing concerning so far.
Good. Phew, that's a relief.
Yeah. Thanks, Alexa.
Thank you.
The next question I had was whether decisions about going virtual or going hybrid or going full in person and so on could possibly be made at the building or classroom level as opposed to district wide.
Oh, no. No. No.
I think I'd like to hear Joe.
So that gets into, that gets into our capacity issue. If we had not gone to distance learning, I don't think we would have had school at Taylor Hicks right after Thanksgiving. And where we're really hit at capacity is the bigger schools, the high school, the middle school, and Granite, because of their sheer size. When we start doing contact tracing, our nurses are out, man. That's all they do. And then that pulls the administrator in, and that's all the principal does. There's people in this room that can tell you that for weeks before we shut it down, that's all they were doing was running around and seeing how far away kids were from each other and following those protocols from CDC. And then unfortunately quarantining kids or teachers couldn't come to work because they were quarantined. We've had lots of teachers quarantined, and we've had lots of teachers who have had COVID. And so it's those capacity issues. And we could definitely look at that school by school. Now, in terms of, this question comes up too, can we look at each school differently with data or metrics? And Alexa, I don't know if you want to speak to that. I don't know if we can disaggregate to that level. I know there's zip code searches that we can do, and we've done, and we've looked at those types of things, but can you get down to that level, or is it just about capacity, would you say, Alexa?
It's a little of both. We have been trying to keep track as best we can of how many students we've had that have tested positive, how many of those are now recovered and able to come back to school once we start, and then how many we've quarantined due to a close contact that happened at school, and then how many people we've asked to stay home based on a contact they had in the community, like at home or at a gathering, and then also those who have had symptoms. So that's on our COVID dashboard, which is on our homepage, and I update that as I can. One thing that we've experienced during distance learning is because kids aren't coming on campus, families aren't always notifying us when someone in their family tests positive or when their student is exposed or whatever the situation may be. So we're doing the best we can when we're notified. So we do have some data about how many students have been quarantined at each school. And we do that through an attendance code that we have. But also to speak to the contact tracing piece, not only is it the contact tracing when we're made aware of a student who has tested positive, but every student who is called in sick, the nurse follows up with that family to figure out why are they sick, what are their symptoms, is it explainable by a diagnosis, have they had any contact with anyone, and then giving them guidance on how long they need to isolate, where to get tested if that family wants to get tested. And so at our bigger schools, particularly Mile High and the high school, all our nurses are doing all day also is calling families and figuring out what's going on at home. Why is this kiddo out today? Does this kid, is he positive? Do they just need to stay home for 10 days? So, and that's a really critical piece of keeping COVID off of our campuses, is talking to families, understanding what's going on, and then giving them guidance about returning to school. And so that can become overwhelming very quickly for our nurses. And we're bringing in some volunteers to help with that also, to help with those follow-up calls. But that's a really key piece besides the contact tracing of stopping transmission at school.
What's the situation for transmission right now, Alexa? Do you have any?
Like how many active cases have we made?
Yeah.
So I updated the dashboard yesterday and we had 1, but today I think I got 3 or 4 emails about students who had tested positive. And then I can pull up my employee tracking sheet. We have a number of staff who are either positive or quarantining right now due to contact.
And of those kids, the kids, not the adults, what was I going to ask? What grade levels were they from? Do you know that?
We have 1 elementary family, 1 family at Granite, and a family at the high school. So it's kind of all over the place.
So Alexa, these are only the families who have reported to us.
Correct.
And that because they're not in school, there may be additional.
Correct.
Okay. Right.
And the messaging we've been doing with parents as principals are communicating, our coming back to hybrid plan is please, please, please let us know if someone in your household is sick, if you've recently been exposed to COVID, because we want to make sure that those who show up on Monday should actually be there and shouldn't be in isolation or quarantine.
Okay. The next question addresses a topic that I'm seeing quite often in the emails we're getting. If I'm a parent with concerns about my child's social emotional health, where can I go for assistance? And what can and will the schools do on their own to assess and support students' mental and emotional health? And I know, Joe, that you did just send out that rather lengthy letter about what we offer for social emotional help, but I'm not sure everyone would have gotten it. So this is kind of a repeat.
Yeah, and I might have Kelly follow me up. I'll just be kind of general, and Kelly helped me a lot last week in gathering everything that we're doing in the district. It's a lot, but simple answer is the same with the academics. We've got to get folks back in touch with their teacher and their principal who have systems in place to help them with social emotional support. And so that's on every campus. Part of what my write-up says is PUSD, unlike many districts, has dedicated over $500,000 into social emotional staff to support our students. They have been in place and working very hard throughout this. But we want to make sure we do a good job of letting people know where that resource is and how to get a hold of that resource. We've added a lot to that resource throughout this year too, including a website, and now one of our counselors is putting out weekly videos that parents can use with their kids, and also classroom teachers can use as part of their lessons. And so this is a big issue for us and the state and the country, and we have really good resources. Kelly, will you follow up with a little bit of detail in terms of how we seek out those students and how we try to connect them with our social emotional counselors?
Absolutely. I would say the number one takeaway for me after doing a lot of research about what we're doing is what Joe said, is our social emotional counselors are there for any kids. And we oftentimes will reach out to kids because we've heard from their teachers or their parents that maybe they're struggling, and we don't always hear back from them. So we're offering that, but we don't always have parents take advantage of that for their kids. Or maybe if it's a high school kid, the high school kid's not taking advantage of it. But we have posted their emails, and they're always available to have parents reach out to or kids reach out to them. We have hotlines for parents if they are truly concerned about their kids' mental health. We have resources for parents on the website that they can click on, and it talks about developmentally what you can do with your kids. But we when we hear about it, we're referring kids to our social emotional counselors who are reaching out to kids. And we're also letting parents know again and again that they're available and they're willing to talk to the kids at any time. So that's what's happening currently right now.
And sometimes when we connect those social emotional counselors with families, recently as in COVID, I mean, this is the trick here. They've turned that down and said, no, I mean, I just want my kid back in school talking to his friends at lunch and stuff. And I get that. I don't know that that's social emotional, but that's social. And that's why we've said all along that our number one priority is to get kids back in school as soon as possible. So, but it's, you know, it's like everything, it's hard to connect those folks during this time, but we have lots of resources, more, I would say more than most districts in Arizona. So I hope people take advantage of that.
Thank you. The next question has pretty much been answered, but in case there's anything else you'd like to add, what are we doing to determine what learning loss has occurred during this year? And how do we know what that loss might be and what will be offered to make up for those losses? And I know we heard some great news about summer school and the break camp.
Yeah. So just generally, you know, during COVID time, not during COVID time, our teachers are continuously assessing kids. And for some people, that means like a state assessment. No, every day we're assessing kids on what we're teaching. And we've got formal programs to assess kids, informal programs, but that's a big piece of what we do every single day in education. Obviously, there are going to be huge gaps with COVID. And I know we talked about this some at our board retreat, but a lot of what we're going to be doing in the next year, probably 2 years, you know, right away when we get back to in person, we're going to spend a lot of our summer digging in and triaging and finding out and hearing from parents, families, students, and using assessment data to find out what kind of damage COVID did. And then we will start to tweak our strategic plans and maybe even have a strategic plan to get us back on track. I will say this though, too. I've also read a lot of articles recently that talk about, and we're going to be looking at more of this, but how, when we get back to normal, how teachers approach this. And if we create this panic piece and we approach our students with this panic of like, I don't know what we're going to do to catch you up, man. I mean, this last year just ruined you. That's not how we're going to work, folks.
No.
More about this is to talk to students about what happened to them during COVID and talk about the social emotional piece, what they've learned, how they've grown, what gaps they have emotionally. We'll be able to take care of those much easier academically. But bottom line is this. Oh, and I have to quote my mom. I'm going to do this one more time, but my mom's a lifelong teacher. And, you know, we're all talking about this all the time. And she said, Joe, we've always taken our students from where they're at, no matter what's happened to them.
Right.
And we move them as far forward as we can. And so I don't mean to generalize this or downplay it, but
that's true.
That stands true more than it ever has in our history, is that and now we have great technology and we have great assessment programs in place to help us do that. But I'm not saying it's not going to be a lot of work, and it's going to be a lot of our focus over the next probably 2 years.
I would also say that pretty much universally, our kids have learned things and grown in other ways that they would not have had they not experienced this. And I think we can emphasize, you know, think now you can do this, or think how much more you appreciate going to school or whatever. But I think we can emphasize the positive as well. We certainly need to look at the gaps, but there are pluses to be had with this as well.
Education Week, if anybody gets it, I still get it, has some good tips on that. You know, how to close the gaps, how to, you know, make that time well spent, you know, at least in retrospect. And as Joe just pointed out, but the emphasis should be, they say, all the experts who contributed to this effort, they say it's more important to focus on their social emotional experiences and the ones that are to come right now. I mean, I'm not talking about something that occurred 5 years ago there, or that may occur 5 years from now, as being a trauma for kids. This is a trauma for all kids in one way or another. So the emphasis should be on how they feel about blank. What did they learn about blank? Did they prefer being, well, they probably, I know they'd all say they prefer being in school. But that's just a point of interest. I don't know if that's correct or not, but it does sound correct. This will be something that people will talk about, like the kids will talk about, like 9/11. I don't mean to be overly dramatic, but it was a turning point in my life, and I was an adult.
Yep.
And it didn't change my life as much as this has. So I guess the whole point is to those social emotional counselors that we have are going to be busy, busy, busy. But I do think teachers can think about how to inject, positive things in their classes. Well, don't make a big deal out of tests. Don't make a big deal out of getting into college right now. Well, the seniors will have to, but
Connie, if I could interject, I will say that it's part of our culture to every day check in with our kids on a social emotional level. We do that with Capturing Kids' Heart.
I know you do. I know.
Yeah. And so that will continue. In fact, they'll probably emphasize it even more. That doesn't worry me at all. Our teachers put our kids at the forefront, and we know that we don't capture their hearts, we don't capture their minds.
Well, and it shows with the younger kids. I haven't been able to observe the older kids, but it does show when that program is fabulous. And I've recommended it to a lot of schools. So I mean, yeah.
Remind people too, and put in another plug about the article that I wrote. I think it'll be in the Courier tomorrow. It's also on our website, and it's certainly not certainly several people in this room contributed to that. There's a lot of people putting into those things that I put out, but it's pretty comprehensive on what we offer from social emotional. It hits Capturing Kids' Heart, Kids at Hope, all the different programs, refers you to the website. And so, hopefully people that have concerns about that can take a look and see what PUSD is doing in that arena. We're also going to have our friends from Arm to Know on the radio with us tomorrow. Soup Scoop, where we'll talk for an hour about social emotional learning and how we're addressing that in PUSD. That's on KQ.
I didn't mean to make it sound like we weren't doing anything. I know what you're doing. I've been to classrooms and seen it. I've been, mostly with the middle school age group, and they're still the way they always were, but they miss school. That's what it comes down to.
One more question, and I'm going to tell you right up front that I really don't even like to ask this question. I have watched the massive amount of work that our teachers and staff have been doing this year to provide a whole different form of education from what we've been able to do in the past. However, the question is the reason we're not returning to full in-person learning because teachers are refusing or reluctant to return, or are there other reasons why we would have staffing issues if we tried to go back?
Oh,
it's a great question, Deb, and I think the community's asking it because it's being asked on the national level. There's a lot of confusion about teacher unions. Arizona doesn't have teacher unions. Arizona, we're a right to work state. Arizona has teacher associations, and many districts focus on that. You can do a news search in Arizona or in the country. There are lots of people fighting that way in their districts. PUSD is not. We don't have that history because we have principals and directors, and a major focus of our strategic plan and of my leadership and of the leadership of all of those people has been to create a communication model where our teachers feel like they can approach us at any time. We hope this is the same with our parents and our students, but we have tried hard to create an open door policy. It's worked very well. We don't have threats from teachers to sick out or things like that. We talk things through together. We listen and we talk things through. Again, just like parent groups, there are teachers who have lots of opinions about this, and we listen to those opinions. And sometimes we don't follow those opinions, and then those people don't feel heard. But I will say in PUSD, our teachers really truly believe in every child every day. When advanced ed came here just a couple of years ago, that was their main point to us, is that every person in our district and in our community lives every child every day. And while I know that a lot of people feel that that's been compromised during COVID for whatever reason, or things have been hard, or, yeah, they have, for sure. And I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, Deb, but no, our teachers have talked with us and listened with us. They've been unbelievable through this whole thing in terms of saying, okay, well, we'll go back, but we have some questions. They want to feel safe. They also have, many of them may have a health issue, or someone that lives with them that has a health issue. And so, but PUSD has always said, and there's principals in the room, we'll work with each of those individual teachers to figure out how we can help them while we continue to move forward. And I've got 100 stories that are personal, so I can't share those with you, with those teachers. But we've had people that have quit because of their fear of COVID. And some of these are legends. We've had people that have said, I have to quit because my spouse has immune compromise. And we have said, are there other ways that we can work with you? Can we put you in a prep program? And so our principals know that this, and I think our staff knows this, is that we work in individual situations, and we do whatever we can do to get our teachers to be on board with the direction that we're headed. So our teachers' feelings, one of the many, many facets of this decision, darn right, you bet they are. So are parent feelings, and they're divided on all different sides. So are teachers. We have teachers who can't wait to get, all of them can't wait to get back, but we have teachers saying, we need to get back now. That's my favorite word, now. And we also have teachers saying, like, if we come back now, I can't. So what can we do? So did I answer the question, or is there anything that people want to add?
Here, I'll add in it, just maybe similar, with a little different wording. And I know that the word balance has been mentioned in this discussion, and there has to be a balance, right? I mean, you can't just look at the metrics. You can't just put all your stock in one aspect, whether it's the metrics or parents or teachers or anything. I mean, we have to have a balance. I really feel like our district has done a great job of having this balance, holding this balance and tension of listening to parents all across the board, listening to staff all across the board, looking at numbers and how they have always been changing month to month throughout this year, and holding it all in balance. And what I would say, I wholeheartedly believe in how we've been doing this, with the premise, the overarching fundamental objective to get kids in school and to do it in a safe way. Our school district deeply believes that kids need to be in school, and I appreciate that. I applaud that. I have 2 kids in the district still, and I sense that, I believe that, in the communications, I hear that. I'm sure there's parents on both sides that say it's not fast enough or it's too fast, and that's part of that balance, right? We are holding that balance in attention of wanting to get kids into school as soon as possible. So, I mean, my 2 cents I would throw in is in the same way I think probably most of us are, and again, it's across the board. My 2 cents is I would really love to see kids full in person as soon as possible. And I think we would all, nod our heads to that. And so I applaud all the work to get to hybrid as soon as possible. And the faster we can get to full in person, the better, whether it's February 22nd or 29 or whatever that may be. I know kids want to be full in person. We all understand the value of what we do, and that's because we're a part of this. We deeply believe in public education, and that's why we're in this. And so I applaud all of the efforts so far. I can't even imagine all the work that our district has done, the administration and the staff and the teachers. It's a lot of work, but we got to keep holding it in balance. Not one loud voice can throw off the balance. We can't listen to just the loudest people. We have to have everything in balance. And I feel like we are.
Thank you, John. Are there any other comments on this topic? This has been very difficult. It will continue to be difficult. I truly appreciate the efforts that our district admin has made, and our leadership and our staff and our families and our kids. We're all in this together, and we're going to have to dig our way out soon, I hope. I assume, Joe, that you will be considering all you've heard here and putting together any suggestions you might have.
Absolutely. I mean, we're continuously gathering information. Yeah, my life's been interesting lately. It's like I'm continuously gathering information and sharing everything that we know and understand. Thursday with staff, Friday with parents. And, I know that sometimes hard to read, and appreciate people just understanding that. But, that's kind of how my weeks are building up is, okay, what have we learned this week and how do we apply that? And I'm going to commit again. We're moving as fast as we possibly can. And that doesn't mean we just pull a trigger and just say, okay, everybody's back. There are many more things to get. I wish it was that easy. I wish it could just be a vote and we could just do what most people wanted to do or whatever it was. It's not that situation. It's not that situation at all. And like John said, it just considers so many things, and you have to balance those. And so we're here to talk with parents who are frustrated, and we're here to continue to talk with our staff, and we're listening to all of those folks. And the only thing I know to do is to continue to listen to all of them, to continue to have these conversations with our board, who's just doing a great job of sharing their thoughts and concerns and worries and what they're hearing from their constituents. But I meet with a group of leaders that I've been working with now for almost 7 years that have gone through some really tough things over the years. And they are experts at talking to their staff, their students, and their parents, and having the overall feel for where that balance point is. And I'm asking and I'm pushing, and I believe in those people, and I believe in this process, and I believe in our elected officials who ultimately are making sure we do the right thing. And so that process is in place. I know there are folks out there that don't feel listened to. We're going to continue to do our best to hear what you have to say. I think a lot of that was represented here tonight. I know that our board members have been very concerned about making sure that they have those questions answered, those emails that we're getting, and from all sides. So thanks to everyone. We'll continue to work as hard as we possibly can, and we're moving there. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. So these vaccines are the answer, and if I can make them move faster, I will. Alexa, work on that, please.
All right.
Well, Deb, I'd like to,
John?
yeah, just in making a comment. I don't know, you know, it says on my screen that this is live on YouTube, but it doesn't say how many people are viewing it. And then if people do then view it later too. But maybe I think a comment that I'd make to maybe folks watching this that aren't on this Zoom, you know, aren't necessarily our board and our administration, but to parents in general, is that, you know, I think before COVID hit, I feel like our district had a great reputation, a great support from our community. And in it, it would just be really sad and I think heartbreaking if parents and people in this community were to allow this incredibly difficult, unprecedented time to destroy their support of this school district, to destroy their support in this community. And so maybe I would just encourage folks, like, don't let a challenging time ruin relationships. Don't let a challenging time destroy all that we've done for the support of our community, of our school district, of our kids. It's not worth it. You know, when we come out of this, we're now still in this town together, and it's in challenging times that the character of people shines, and it's in challenging times that is an opportunity for people to continue to work together and get through the hard time. And so encouraging parents to call and come in and talk. How can I help? What can I do? Talk to your principals, to your teachers. What can we do to help? And not let a challenging time destroy all the amazing things that we've done and accomplished, the amazing district that we have. It would just be sad that a hard time would destroy what has been so great over the years.
Thank you, John. We'll move on to the next agenda item, which is just to ask if anyone has any future agenda items. Hearing none. Our next meeting will be a regular study and voting session on March 2nd at 5 o'clock. We anticipate that will continue to be a virtual meeting as this was. And a reminder that February 15th is President's Day holiday. So thank you all for the terrific discussion of this whole issue tonight. I appreciate your time and your attention and your caring for our kids.